So I'm going to use this as the main image because I really like the hair flip and I really like the dress flip. The first thing I'm going to do is a little bit complicated. If you notice, I'm not really liking this face as much as some of the other pictures that we took. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the face from this picture and I'm going to cut it out using the lasso tool to make a selection. And I'm going to use it on the main picture we're building off of. And this is just compositing, when you combine several pictures into one. And I know it may sound a little complicated. I mean, it was really intimidating the first time that I tried to do this kind of Photoshop and this kind of compositing, but it's actually really easy, as I'm going to show you right here. The main thing you want to do is match up the tones. So I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to create a layer mask first. Then I'm going to hit on this first little square box, and by hitting Command M on my Mac keyboard, I'm going to bring up curves. And I'll zoom in real close here. So, wait, before I bring up curves, let me position the head a little bit better. Alright, I think that's good. So now let's bring up our curves. So I'm going to brighten this up by pulling this line up. And you can see that already makes a big difference. So that looks good like that. So now I'm going to go to my layer mask over here. And I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to bring up the paintbrush tool. And I'm just going to start to erase away at the edges of the selection where we don't want the selection to appear. And you can see that the head from the first picture is starting to show through, but that's okay because we're going to fix that in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these layers together, which I know some photographers would probably tell you not to do, but that's just my way of doing it. And I'm going to select the clone tool, and I'm just going to clone in the gaps. Also notice how I'm using a really small soft brush. I'm using a really small brush because I'm painting really close to the face, so I want to make sure I do a careful and detailed job. Alright, and I think that looks pretty good just like that. I'm trying to decide if I need a little bit more hair right here, because there's just so much here and then there's kind of this gap. So let's experiment and see if that looks better if we just add a little bit more there. Actually, I think that does look better. Yeah, that looks better. Cool. Alright, so I'm going to merge these layers together, and really quickly I'm just going to use a lasso selection tool to get rid of this piece in front of her face, which I kind of like, but it's a little distracting when you zoom in close, so I'm just going to get rid of it real quick. I am going to use the dodge tool at 15% exposure, just to whiten the eyes a tiny bit. So now the eyes pop a little bit more. And this is kind of bugging me, so before I continue, the model was actually wearing something black underneath the dress. So I'm going to use my lasso selection tool to create a selection. And then I'm going to get rid of the black. I'm going to redefine the edge a tiny bit. And then I'm going to go to my adjustments, hue, saturation, and I'm going to just lighten the selection. And you can see that the black is kind of starting to fade away a little bit. Okay, so now I want to get rid of the people in the background, and I want to make the background a little bit darker. So something that I like to do is kind of like HDR photography, where you take different photos of the background and the subject in different exposure settings, like I did here. Okay, so I'm going to select this whole image by hitting Control A and then Control Copy. And I'm going to bring it over to the main image. So the dimensions are slightly off a tiny bit, so I'm going to reduce the opacity and fill level so I can kind of see where I need to match up the picture behind me. Okay, so now I'm going to bring the opacity and fill levels back to 100%. And I'm going to create a layer mask. Alright, so now that I have my paintbrush tool with black on top, which means that I'm erasing away, I'm going to start erasing away at the picture where I don't want it to appear. So it's looking a little bit crazy now, but we're going to fix this up. And now, just so that my subject and the background matches up and the colors a little bit, I'm just going to brighten this layer just a tiny bit. So now I'm painting with white, and I'm painting back in the layer so that I could get rid of this woman who's giving us the ultimate like haters look. I don't really blame people when they give me weird looks, because it is a pretty weird thing to kind of do these shoots in public where a bunch of people are walking by, and people often feel uncomfortable because they don't feel like they can walk through your picture. But I always tell them it's fine to keep walking because I just Photoshop people out anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. But there is something really satisfactory when you get your picture and you're like Photoshopping people out. I'm just going to bring up a curves layer and just darken the model a tiny bit. Okay, so this may take me a little while, so I'm going to finish doing this composite. So I'm going to change the hardness of the brush to 100%. So I'm just going to continue outlining this dress with the brush with black on top, white on bottom. So now that I'm getting to the hair, I'm going to change the brush back to 0% hardness, because we want a really soft brush to kind of blend in the lines of the background with the composite that we're doing. So I'm just going to go over this. So you can see this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like after. And for this part, I'm also going to use a really soft brush so that it blends together as best as it possibly can. Maybe make it bigger and bring it back just a tiny bit. Alright, so we've done as much as we can with that background layer. Unfortunately, we still have this going on in the background, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my polygonal lasso selection tool, and I'm just going to create a selection around the parts that we want to erase from the picture. Okay, so this is how our finished selection looks. You can notice some marching ants. So we're going to create a background copy layer, and we're going to take our clone tool over here, and we're just going to start to fill in the selection using other parts of the photo. So I'm going to hit the clone tool like kind of far away, because if I hit it up close, then it'll start cloning all the stuff that we don't want. So I'm going to start cloning from about here, and I'm just going to fill that in. So pretty easy, right? It doesn't take as long as you think it would. And once you hit Control D to remove the selection, you notice that, there's all these jagged lines, but that's why we have our background copy to fix that. So I'm going to hit Layer Mask, go to my brush tool with black on top so I can erase away. This is what it looked like before, this is what it looked like after. And there's still a few little minor adjustments I'm going to go in to fix. So I just brought the image into Adobe Bridge, and I just did a few minor adjustments. I lowered the highlights a little bit, and I also took up the darks and the shadows. So the image is, looking a little bit better. I'm just kind of cleaning it up a tiny bit before I do all the official curve layers and textures. I kind of want the dress to flow a little bit more, especially up on top. I kind of want this to be more of a curved line, like a hill, like this. So what I'm going to do is take the quick selection tool, or you can just hit W on your keyboard, and I'm just going to select the dress. Okay, so I have my selection in place. Now I'm going to hit Command T to transform it. Then I'm going to go to Transform Warp. Warp is a really great tool. I use it a lot on my fabric pictures. Now you can see there's a little box and there's little points on the box. And what you can do with those points is you can manipulate them. You could bring this up, move this to the side, just give it more of a curve, more of an elevation, kind of make it look like there's more wind flying through the dress. I can't even tell you how many times this tool has saved my life. Like, I don't just use it on dresses. I'll also select the hair and manipulate the hair to kind of make it look like there's more wind in the hair and just give it a little bit more flow. And I'll use it sometimes on the backgrounds. I used it once in an ocean to kind of make it look like the ocean was curving in the shape of a hill instead of a straight line, which was a really interesting effect. So I use this tool for a lot of different things. And I think that looks good like that, so I'm going to hit enter, deselect, and now we can see what it looked like before and what it looked like after. So now that I have a background copy, I can make a layer mask and just edit out the parts that we don't want to appear. So that's on 0%. So where do we not want this to appear? Well, for one, right here, that looks good, and you can see this is definitely not blending in very well, so I'm just gonna get rid of that a little bit. Once you add up all these minor little adjustments that you do in your Photoshop process, it really makes a big difference altogether. So definitely keep the warp tool in mind if you're creating an image like this, especially if you have a dress or some flying hair. It really comes in handy. And now we're going to brighten up the model by using curves and probably a little bit of the dodge tool. So I'm going to select her arms and pretty much everywhere where her skin appears. Alright, so now that we have our selection in place, I'm going to go to Adjustments, Curves, and just bring up this line to brighten her up. And look at that! Isn't that gorgeous when you do that? Oh, I love curves. Curves is really the icing on the cake when it comes to editing. And I know that Photoshop or editing in general is a very personal process, so everyone does it differently, but I think it's safe to say that pretty much everyone uses curves for lighting or color adjustments or just any little random thing. Curves really comes in handy. And just to give it a little bit softer tones, I moved this point up a little bit, just so that the blacks aren't, so black. They're just a little bit softer. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new background copy layer, and I'm going to go to Filter, Liquify. And let's raise that a little bit. I kind of want to give her a smaller appearance, so I'm going to make a really large brush, and I'm just going to suck in her body a little bit. Not because I think she needs to be thinner. I think she's beautiful the way that she is. I just like my pictures to look like paintings. When I make a picture, I want the contours of the lines to be beautiful and painterly-like. So this is a little detail I do on everybody. I do it on myself. I'll do it on the hair a little bit if I want to fly it out, kind of like that. Or on the dress if I want to make this go up a little bit, which I think I do. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. And if you make a mistake, you have your background copy, so you could always create a layer mask and erase away at any unwanted changes you don't want to appear in the picture, kind of like this. But I want all those changes to appear, so I'm going to keep the picture the way that it is, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the full effect. And you can see this is what it looked like before, this is after. So I think it makes, pretty subtle, pretty big difference, actually. Okay, so I want to create a vignette. So I'm going to do that by creating a new background layer, and I'm just going to use the lasso selection tool to make a selection on the picture where we want the vignette to appear. So I kind of just want it thick in all four corners of the picture, and I definitely want it in the sky, so it'll bring out the sky a little bit more. Get rid of that. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Redefine Edge, and I'm going to smooth it and feather it. And now Adjustments and Curves. And I'm going to bring this line down just to darken it, not too much. And you can just kind of watch me as I play around with the curve lines a little bit here and just kind of see how I do it. I like to make two dots here, kind of where it appears here on the screen, and then I'll move this dot up just to give a little bit of soft tones to the picture. I kind of want a little bit more dynamic lighting where her face, body, and dress appear, so I'm going to add the lighting myself, and what I'm going to do is create a background copy layer, and then I'm just going to draw a line, a circle, where I want all the light to appear. And I'm going to feather that as much as I possibly can. There we go. Adjustments, curves, and I'm going to bring this line up just to brighten it. And then to add more contrast, I'm going to take this dot and move it to the left. And you can see the contrast kind of appearing. It makes the light, since the lighting was so flat, it's easy to manipulate. And curves does a really good job of that. Now, I don't want to take away from the light here. So since I have my layers mask, I'm going to grab the paintbrush tool and I'm just going to remove some of that lighting that we just created. So you can just kind of see the little pop of light here. And sometimes when I make an adjustment that I really like, I'll duplicate it. So I'm going to take this curves layer, bring it down here, duplicate it. Oh wow. Now I'm going to take a background copy and merge these layers together so I can see all the changes I made in one layer. So you can see that makes a huge difference with the lighting. I want to brighten up the dress a little bit, so something else that I like to do is I'll take the dodge tool, only at 15%, and I'm just going to highlight certain areas of the picture that I want to appear brighter. And something else I like to do is go to my selective color adjustment layers right here, and I'll go to the whites. And what I'm going to do is just add more yellow to the whites, which will just appear mostly in the sky where the whites appear in the picture. I'm going to reduce the cyan. Ooh, pretty. And see, taking down the blacks creates more of a highlight, so it brings out the yellow colors even more. I'm going to take it away from the sun just a little bit, because now you can't even see it. Maybe I should do it in this one too. Ooh, yeah, look at that. So now you can see my selection around the sky, and I'm going to create a background layer and bring up my curves. And let's just mess around with it a little bit. Ooh, pretty. Now I'm just going to take the dodge tool and I'm just going to brighten up certain areas of the model's chest and face. It's just a tool that is so good. I use it multiple times when creating pictures like this. And now I'm going to make selections on either side of the picture. I'm going to redefine it, feather the edge, and I'm just going to darken it just to give a side vignette to the picture. The next step is to use my textures, which really gives a painterly feel to the picture. So I'm going to make the texture black and white. I'm going to transform it, make it larger, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. And you can see that's what it looks like before and after. And I'm just going to brighten the texture a little bit so that it's not too dark. And you can see clicking the layer on and off really shows the difference and how it makes the picture kind of have a feel to it, like an old age photograph, which I really love. So I sped it up a little bit, but I just removed the texture from the skin because that's not the kind of look I'm going for, which is something I normally do in these pictures. I don't like the texture on the skin. And now I just duplicated the layer, transformed it, and reversed it horizontally so that the texture shows up in the areas of the picture where the first layer did not show up. And now I'm just kind of tweaking it a little bit. I'm editing the colors of the texture. I made the clouds a little bit more blue. I'm taking away the green colors on the curve layer. And now I'm bringing in my second texture, the one that looks a lot like a canvas, and I'm changing the blending mode to soft light and just kind of doing the same thing. I'm making it actually a little bit darker instead of lighter in this case because it makes the texture show up a lot more. And then I'm going to remove it a little bit from the sky and around other areas of the picture where I don't want it to appear. And you can see I'm just kind of tweaking the colors a little bit. And probably one of the most important techniques I can give you to really making a picture look like a painting is going to filter and reducing the noise of a picture. And you can take a look at my settings here. When you zoom in really close on pictures, you can notice a lot of like tiny little grainy dots. Even if the picture wasn't taken necessarily with a high ISO, there's always like little tiny grainy dots. So doing noise reduction just smooths everything out and makes the skin kind of look like porcelain. So right now I'm adding noise reduction about 6 or 7 times, which is usually the amount I usually apply to a picture. And I'm just removing it from the eyes a little bit, the eyebrows, the lips, the nose, the ears. And I'm doing that because I don't want 100% 7 layers of noise reduction in those little areas, because it does kind of take away from the quality. It kind of adds a little bit of a blur effect, and I don't want the eyes, the nose, or the lips to be blurry. I'm also taking it, if you notice, a little bit away from the hair, because I don't want the hair to be super soft looking. And then I just reduced the brush to 50% on opacity and fill, because it's still important to me to have the neck, chest, feet, and knuckles of the hand a little bit in detail. I don't want it completely blurred. And now I'm going to speed this up. I'm just taking away the noise reduction from the dress and a little bit from the ocean line. And I'm doing that because I want those details to appear, but I'll keep the noise reduction in the rest of the picture. And I'm also removing it a little bit from the clouds so that the texture shows up. If you've made it this far, you're amazing for sticking around this long. I applaud you. And if you decide to make a picture based off this tutorial, please tag me in it, because I would love to check it out. And I'm not lying when I say I put my blood, sweat, and tears in these tutorials and making these pictures and going out and shooting. So I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, or if you give this video a big thumbs up. And I'll have a lot more tutorials coming your way, so don't forget to check back, and I'll see you guys next time.